Burned alive? The case that shocked South Carolina Megan Bodiford murder. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. It began with a message, a short message, a message that chilled everyone who later read it. A message that would become the last known words sent by 25-year-old Megan Bodiford. She typed it quickly, her hands shaking, her heart racing. She pressed send, and that single text would become a silent alarm, a warning, a message that seemed to say, "I am in danger." But by the time anyone understood, it was already too late. It was November 2021 in South Carolina. A normal evening, quiet, nothing unusual, no storm, no police helicopters, no news alerts or frantic search parties. Just another night in a small town. Megan had finished her day. She had errands, conversations, and normal routines. Nobody around her suspected that this day would be her last. She had plans the next day. She had a job. She had people who loved her. She had a future. But she also had someone in her life who had become dangerous. Someone she had tried to leave. Someone she didn't trust anymore. Someone named Jarrett Davis. Before her name was on headlines, before her story was whispered across South Carolina, before the courtroom was filled with reporters and a grieving family, Megan was just a young woman trying to live her life. She was kind. She was loved. People described her as bright, giving, always smiling. She wanted simple things: happiness, peace, a future with people who treated her right. But life had taken a turn, a dark one. She was in a relationship that was unraveling. Arguments, threats, stress, sleepless nights. She was trying to pull away, trying to find space, trying to regain control of her own life. But separating from someone dangerous is never simple. Sometimes it is the most dangerous moment of all. At some point that night, Megan picked up her phone. She typed a message about Jarrett Davis. A message that would later be read in court. A message that detectives would replay again and again, trying to understand what happened next. The text suggested fear, tension, a sense of danger, and then silence. No more replies, no more calls, no location updates. A bright young woman simply disappeared. People tried calling her. She didn't answer. Friends assumed she was asleep. Family figured she was busy. But the quiet stretched too long. Hours passed. Still nothing. Worry began creeping in. That kind of worry that starts small, but grows heavier with every unanswered call. By afternoon, the unease was impossible to ignore. Something wasn't right. Something felt wrong. Someone needed to check on her. Then, a call came in. Emergency dispatchers reported something strange. Car had been found burning. A vehicle engulfed in flames. Smoke poured into the sky. Firefighters rushed to the scene. Nobody knew who owned the car. Nobody expected what they were about to find. When the fire was finally extinguished, rescuers approached the wreckage. Inside the burned-out frame, they found something that should never have been there. Human remains. A body burned beyond recognition. The fire hadn't been an accident. Someone wanted evidence destroyed. Someone wanted the truth buried. Someone had tried to erase everything, including Megan. But the attempt failed. Instead, the fire started an investigation that would shake South Carolina. Detectives were called. Crime scene techs arrived. Investigators began taking photos and collecting what they could from the charred remains. It was difficult. Heat destroys evidence. Flames erase details. But even burned evidence tells a story. The VIN number identified the car. Records confirmed ownership. And suddenly, a very real fear settled in. The burned body inside the car was almost certainly Megan Bodiford. More tests were needed for confirmation, but the truth was coming. The family was notified. The nightmare had begun. The news spread fast. A missing woman, a burned vehicle, a body inside. People in town felt the fear instantly. This wasn't a random accident. This wasn't a hit and run. This wasn't a medical emergency. Someone had killed Megan. and they had tried to hide the evidence. People whispered in grocery store lines, at gas stations, at work. Everyone wondered the same thing: who would do this? But even before police made an official statement, many already knew where investigators were looking. He was someone close to Megan, someone she had been involved with, someone who had a history with her, someone who reportedly had arguments with her, someone who reportedly caused her fear, someone who could not explain where Megan was. He was the last known person to see her. He was connected to the chilling text. He knew something, and detectives knew he knew something. They brought him in. They questioned him. They listened carefully. Detectives watch everything in interviews: voice, breathing, hesitation, body language, changes in story. They studied Jarrett. They broke his timeline apart piece by piece. And the more questions they asked, the less his answers made sense. Technology is the enemy of lies. Phones keep timestamps. Cell towers log movement. Cars leave GPS traces. Security cameras watch from gas stations, stores, intersections. Even deleted messages can sometimes be recovered. Investigators pulled everything. They followed the digital footprints. Step by step, minute by minute, the timeline became clearer. When the evidence was charted out, one conclusion kept forming: this was no accident. While detectives worked, family grieved. They prayed investigators were wrong. They hoped the burned body was anyone else. Anyone but Megan. But deep down, they knew. Parents know when something is wrong. Siblings know when a bond has been broken. Loved ones feel the silence. Megan was gone, and someone had taken her from them. But families in crimes like this face a second nightmare. They can't pause to mourn. They have to fight. They have to talk to police. They have to face reporters. They have to answer impossible questions. They have to be strong while their world collapses. And they have to sit in courtrooms with the person allegedly responsible. Medical examiners examined the remains. Even burned bodies can speak. Science can find fractures, trauma, accelerants, residues, clues. Bit by bit, they built the final moments. And what they found painted a dark picture. This was not an accident. This was homicide. Investigators created a timeline, a chilling one. They laid out the last messages, the last calls, video footage, vehicle movement, physical evidence. Piece by piece, they built the story Megan could no longer tell. And each brick they placed pointed directly at one person: Jarrett Davis. Evidence mounted. Interviews multiplied. Witness statements strengthened the timeline. The scene analysis supported the theory. The digital records matched the suspicions. And detectives reached a point every investigator hopes for. They believed they could prove what happened in court. Arrest warrants were drafted. Paperwork was finalized. Police made their move. The man connected to Megan was taken into custody. The charges were serious, life-altering, and the community paid attention. News crews reported the arrest. Headlines spread online. Social media filled with anger and heartbreak. People who never met Megan knew her story now. A young woman burned in a car. A chilling final message. A boyfriend accused. Community demanding justice. The arrest didn't end anything. It started everything. Because an arrest is not a conviction. Night in South Carolina can be quiet. Too quiet. And on that night in February, the darkness outside Megan Bodiford's home felt heavy. Like something was waiting. Like something terrible was about to happen. Megan wasn't calm. She wasn't resting. She was pacing. She kept looking at her phone, checking messages, reading the same ones again and again, because she wasn't safe. Not anymore. She had already made a decision. She was leaving Jarrett Davis. She wanted out. She wanted peace. But people don't always let you go, especially people like Jarrett. Earlier that evening, Megan had typed a message to someone close to her, a message that would become the center of the entire case. A message prosecutors would later hold up in court and say, she was telling the world who was going to kill her. The text read something close to, You don't know what he's put me through. Simple, chilling, raw. A warning, confession, prediction. A message from a woman who knew she might not survive the night. And hours later, she didn't. To understand why this text was so important, you have to understand what Megan had lived through. Her relationship with Jarrett Davis wasn't a story of romance. It was a slow slide into fear. First, things were fine. He was charming, attentive, affectionate. He talked big dreams. He made promises. He said he could be the man she needed. But slowly, the darkness showed itself. Control, anger, jealousy started small. Who are you texting? Where are you going? Why didn't you answer faster? Then it escalated. Raised voices, arguments that never ended, accusations, emotional pressure, threats. Megan didn't scream back. She didn't fight for dominance. She just absorbed the blows. Because some people learn early how to survive storms by staying quiet. But being quiet doesn't mean being blind. She knew something wasn't right. She knew she deserved better. She knew she was living next to a man who could explode at any moment. She wanted to leave, and Jarrett could feel her slipping away. Losing control is something men like him do not tolerate. The days before Megan's murder were filled with tension. Family members later said she seemed worried, a little guarded, like she was carrying something she couldn't put down. She wasn't jumping at shadows. She wasn't paranoid. She was in danger, real danger, and she could feel it. She reached out to a trusted person. She opened up. She shared the truth. You don't know what he's put me through. Those words meant everything. Not just fear, not just exhaustion, experience. She had seen what Jarrett was capable of. She had been on the receiving end of his rage. She wanted out, and that was the moment everything snapped. On her last night alive, Megan's phone was active. Messages, contact, movement. She wasn't sleeping. She was preparing, planning, waiting for the right moment. Jarrett was awake too. Did they argue? Did he confront her? Did he demand to know who she had told? Did he sense she was planning to leave? We'll never know every detail of what happened inside that house. There were no cameras, no witnesses, no recording. Only Megan and Jarrett were there. But what happened next tells the story anyway, because only one of them made it out alive. Sometime during the night, Megan ended up in a car. Her car, or a car she was in. She was seen driving, then seen no more. Jarrett later said he wasn't involved. He said he didn't know what happened. He said people were making assumptions. But people don't usually end up dead in burned-out cars by accident. Something happened. Something violent. Something deliberate. For prosecutors, one thing mattered. Megan's body was found, burned, destroyed, left in a vehicle consumed by fire. And that fire didn't start itself. Someone lit it. Someone stayed long enough to make sure the flames grew, then left the scene. Someone who didn't want Megan's body found intact. Someone who didn't want evidence left behind. In cases like this, killers burn victims for one reason: to erase what they've done. But fire doesn't burn everything. Not the way they hope. When emergency crews arrived, the car was already charred. The interior was melted. The structure blackened. Inside was a body. At first, investigators couldn't identify it. No wallet, no phone, no visible face, no recognizable features. The fire had done its job, but science had done more. Human remains tell stories even flames cannot erase. Bone structure, dental identity, biological verification. It was Megan, the 25-year-old woman who had sent her final warning hours earlier. Her last message had become prophecy. When someone is found dead like this, police don't start with strangers. They start with the last person who saw the victim alive. And in this case, that person was obvious. Jarrett Davis. He was questioned, interviewed, pressed. His story was inconsistent. Pieces didn't line up. Time didn't match. Statements shifted. Detectives knew the pattern. When a partner is murdered violently, 9 times out of 10, the killer is the person closest to them, the one who felt control slipping away. They searched for motive, They didn't struggle to find one. Megan was leaving, and Jarrett wasn't willing to be left. In court, prosecutors presented Megan's message. They didn't dramatize it. They didn't need to. A simple, heartbreaking statement. You don't know what he's put me through. It wasn't evidence of murder by itself, but it was context. It was fear. It was a voice speaking from beyond her death. And then prosecutors added the rest. Neighbors heard arguments. Friends testified about Megan's emotional distress. Family members told the court about ongoing tension. Police brought in digital analysis, location data, movement patterns, phone activity, and suddenly a story emerged. Megan was with Jarrett. She died. Her body was burned. The burning happened shortly after she disappeared. No one else had motive. No one else had opportunity. No one else had history. It was him. Many domestic murders fall into patterns. A fight escalates. A threat is made. Violence erupts. Someone dies. But burning the evidence was not rage. That part was calculation. He wanted to destroy the scene. He wanted her body unrecognizable. He wanted silence. But silence has a weakness. Digital footprints don't burn. Phone pings, GPS movement, data pathways, message logs, even deleted texts leave shadows. Prosecutors knew this. Investigators knew this. The jury learned this. And technology spoke louder than Jarrett ever could. In murder cases, few things are more powerful than victims predicting their killer. Jurors heard that message. They saw who she meant. They understood the fear in her words. She wasn't exaggerating. She wasn't hysterical. She wasn't dramatic. She was reporting what she had lived through. She was saying goodbye without realizing it. His attorneys tried to push back. They said, no one saw him do it. No murder weapon was found. No witness placed him at the fire site. The text could be interpreted many ways. But then prosecutors dropped the weight. He had motive. He had means. He had history. He had the last contact. He had the most to lose. And Megan was found dead hours after messaging her fear of him. It was not coincidence. It was sequence. A chain of events jurors couldn't ignore. When the verdict came down, it was heavy. Guilty. Not just guilty of taking a life. Guilty of ending a story that never should have ended. Guilty of silencing a woman who finally tried to escape. Guilty of turning love into horror. Jarrett Davis was sentenced to 43 years in prison. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. For 13 days, the small town was frozen. Search teams combed the riverbanks. Deputies knocked on doors. Volunteers scrolled through social media, hoping to see a post, a message, a clue, anything. But Sawade Birding Ground was still gone. No sign of him. No message. No phone ping. Nothing. It didn't feel real anymore. It felt like the whole community was trapped in a nightmare that refused to end. The mood in the town shifted. People stopped assuming he was just missing. They started fearing something else, something darker, something permanent. Investigators realized that if they were going to find him, they needed to understand who he really was in the days leading up to his disappearance. And that opened a door to a side of Sawade that nearly nobody, except a handful of people, knew. A life full of secrets. A life that, investigators would soon learn, could have put him in danger. On the morning of day 14, Deputy Hernandez sat alone with Sawade's phone records spread out across the desk. The phone still wasn't recovered, but the metadata was available. Most calls and texts were harmless. Family, cousins, school notifications, friends. But a few stood out. There were numbers they didn't recognize. Numbers belonging to adults. Numbers belonging to people from outside the reservation. Numbers that had contacted Sawade late at night. Hernandez stared at the timestamps. 11:43 p.m., 12:16 a.m., 1:02 a.m. What was a 13-year-old doing messaging strangers in the middle of the night? He called the sheriff into the room. Within minutes, tech teams were pulling data, checking names, and mapping connections. They identified usernames from social media accounts, anonymous handles, profiles with no photos, people using fake names. It was the first real lead they had gotten since the day Saweed vanished. At home, the Birding Ground family was exhausted. The living room had become command central. Flyers on the walls, notebooks piled on the coffee table, sleepless relatives sitting silently in folding chairs. Tears had long dried. Hope was thinning, but the family still refused to give up. And then there was a knock at the door. 2 deputies entered and asked to speak with Saweed's parents privately. Everyone else stepped outside or into the kitchen. The officers explained what they had found. Saweed had been talking privately with older teenagers and adults online. Some conversations were harmless, but others were concerning. Some were flirtatious. Others hinted at drug activity, secret meetings, and late-night plans. The room went silent. His mother pressed her hand to her mouth. His father stared straight at the wall, eyes wide and unblinking. They had no idea. Their son had been keeping a secret life. They weren't alone. Investigators knew this wasn't unusual. Many missing children cases begin with an online connection. But now they had a new direction. Find the people he was talking to. Find out if one of them knew what happened. Suddenly, the case wasn't just a missing person investigation. It was a race. One person stood out in the phone logs. Another teenager from the reservation, a close friend of Saweed's. His name was Malik. He had told investigators earlier he knew nothing. But the phone logs showed dozens of messages between them the night before Saweed disappeared. Dozens. The officers went back to him. At first, he denied everything again. He shifted nervously on the couch, legs bouncing, eyes darting around the living room. He was hiding something. Everyone knew it. Hernandez leaned forward. Malik, this might be the last chance we have to find him alive. Silence. Then the boy broke. Tears welled in his eyes, spilled down his cheeks, and he finally told the truth. Saweed had met someone online. A man, older. Someone who offered him money, gifts, and promises. Someone who told Saweed he could help him make real cash, fast. Malik didn't know the man's real name, but he knew something investigators did not. Saweed had planned to meet him that day, the day he disappeared. He told Malik he was going to prove he could make money and help his family. Malik begged him not to go, but Saweed had already made up his mind. That was the last time Malik heard from him. The room went quiet. Officers looked at each other. This was no longer speculation. Saweed had gone to meet someone. Someone older. Someone with influence. Someone dangerous. Investigators now shifted gears. Device forensics and cybercrime units dove into Saweed's online accounts. Messages were recovered from backups. They built a timeline of interactions. They traced usernames to IP addresses. They followed breadcrumb trails across multiple apps. Patterns emerged. Saweed had been talking to this mystery man for weeks, maybe months. The messages showed a gradual build: compliments, jokes, attention, then flattery, and finally opportunities. Money, power, escape. Everything a 13-year-old might think he needed. The man convinced Saweed he could earn hundreds of dollars doing simple jobs. No school needed. No adult oversight. Just quick meetups. No questions asked. How many children had received the same messages? Nobody knew yet. Then investigators found the last message Saweed ever sent. "I'm coming. I'll be there." Exactly 32 minutes later, Saweed disappeared. The digital forensics team pulled an account name, then a secondary account, then a partial real name. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They traced an IP address to a motel outside town. Detectives rushed there immediately, hearts pounding. There were only 2 possible outcomes. Either they'd find a criminal, or they'd arrive too late. They walked to room 11, guns drawn, vests tight, adrenaline surging. A knock. No answer. They kicked the door in. But the room was empty. No signs of struggle. No signs of Saweed. Just a bed, a chair, a duffel bag of clothes, and a used phone charger plugged into the wall. The man was gone. One thing was clear. Someone had tipped him off. Inside a motel trash bin, Detectives found a torn piece of a flyer, one of the missing person posters for Sawade. The face was ripped in half. Whatever this man was, he wasn't innocent. Meanwhile, the town was simmering. Rumors turned into wildfire. Everyone had theories. Some thought Sawade was being trafficked. Others believed he ran away to another state. Others whispered darker ideas, retaliation, gang involvement, or revenge connected to family disputes. Social media made everything worse. Hashtags spread. People demanded arrests. People named suspects publicly. And the Birding Ground family watched helplessly as their son's life, reputation, and innocence were torn apart online. At the center of it all were two parents who just wanted one thing: their baby back. They didn't care about the rumors. They didn't care about the judgment. They didn't care about the secrets that were coming out. They wanted Sawade home, alive. That night, with the weight of the world pressing down on them, Sawade's parents sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by investigators. The sheriff explained everything: the accounts, the messages, the man, the motel, the new lead. His mother collapsed into sobs. His father stared at the floor, fists shaking. The deputies expected anger, but instead, his father whispered, "He was just a boy, not a criminal, not a mastermind, just a child who trusted the wrong person." The sheriff stood. "We're going to find him, promise. But we need your help. Anything you know, anything he said, anything he did, no matter how small. We need it now." The town was on edge. Every shadow seemed alive. Every car passing too slow, too fast, too silent. Megan Bodiford was gone. Her burned-out car had revealed too much. And yet, there was still so much no one knew. Detectives sat in the precinct. Blueprints of the neighborhood spread across tables. Evidence bags lined the counters. The smell of burnt leather still lingered in the air from the car. Hernandez tapped his pen on the table. He stared at the crime scene photos. Something didn't add up. The scorch patterns, the placement of the body, the trajectory of flames. It wasn't just rage. It was methodical. Someone had planned this. Someone had thought about every possible outcome. And detectives knew who that someone was. Jarrett Davis had a history. Friends, neighbors, family all painted a similar picture. Charm in daylight, control in shadows. Every relationship ended the same way, with threats, arguments, and fear. "Once he had you," a neighbor said later in court. "You weren't leaving." Not really. Investigators dug deeper. Old police reports, 911 calls, civil disputes. Patterns emerged: threats to partners, obsessive behaviors, confrontations over minor slights, multiple reports of harassment and intimidation. It was all connecting now. A portrait of a man who could not handle rejection. A man who believed he owned the people he claimed to love. The forensic team reconstructed Megan's final hours. 7:30 p.m. Megan is at home. Phone ping shows she is active. Messages sent to friends. A chilling undertone. 8 p.m. Jarrett Davis arrives home from work. Witnesses place him nearby. 8:15 p.m. Argument overheard by neighbor. Voices loud. Yelling. Megan pleads. Jarrett snaps. Threats thrown. 8:45 p.m. Megan sends final text to close friend. "You don't know what he's put me through." The message is sent from her living room. 9 p.m. Jarrett leaves the house. Goes to his car. Neighbors report seeing him drive slowly around the block. 9:15 p.m. Megan leaves the house for an errand. Possibly lured or coerced. 9:30 p.m. Last confirmed sighting of Megan alive. Surveillance cameras pick up a dark SUV pulling up near the local shopping center. 9:45 p.m. Firefighters called to the scene of the burning car. Arrival within minutes. 9:50 p.m. Car fully engulfed. Megan inside. Everything was happening faster than anyone could process. The pattern was clear. The murder was premeditated. Jarrett's controlling behavior had escalated to its deadly peak. Inside the car, forensic experts began their work. Charred metal, melted glass, but evidence remained. DNA under fingernails. Partial prints on the steering wheel. residue suggesting accelerant placement. Investigators swabbed every surface. Every inch was analyzed. Lab results confirmed what they had feared. Jarrett's DNA was on the interior door. Fingerprints matched those on the steering wheel. Accelerant found traced to a container in his garage. Technology didn't lie. Flames could not erase these facts. Each piece was another nail in the coffin. Digital detectives worked round the clock. Phone pings, GPS social media logs, call records. Jarrett's phone had gaps, unexplained silences, deleted messages. But deleted messages aren't gone forever. Recovered logs showed deleted communications with friends, co-workers, and family. He had plotted. He had manipulated. He had orchestrated everything with cold precision. And the timeline aligned perfectly with the forensic evidence. Meanwhile, Megan's family refused to sit quietly. Her mother organized vigils. Her father spoke to reporters. Every night, they cried, prayed, and shouted for justice. Her younger siblings didn't understand why they couldn't see her. They asked why she didn't come home. The family became the public face of outrage. Every news station, every reporter, every headline. Megan's family was fighting for her even when she couldn't. "It's not just about punishment," her mother said. "It's about remembering her. It's about showing the world she mattered." With mounting evidence, investigators focused entirely on Jarrett. They re-interviewed neighbors, former partners, co-workers. Stories converged. He was obsessive. He monitored phones. He knew where everyone was at all times. He threatened anyone who tried to intervene. The control he exerted over Megan was no anomaly. It was part of a pattern that stretched back years. And now it had ended in death. When the case finally went to court, the prosecution's approach was surgical. They presented the evidence piece by piece. Text messages, witness testimonies, forensic reports, surveillance footage. Each piece layered like building blocks. Each moment tightened the noose. Defense tried to argue accidental fire. They argued lack of intent. They argued misinterpretation of texts. But prosecutors countered with Jarrett's history, the timeline reconstruction, the methodical placement of accelerants, the chilling message Megan sent hours before death. The jury listened. They saw a man who could not tolerate being left, a man who controlled, a man who destroyed a life to maintain that control. Even the media could not ignore the step-by-step breakdown. Megan at home, the argument, the final text, Jarrett leaving, returning, waiting, her leaving for errands, car engulfed in flames. Experts testified that the murder was calculated, not a crime of passion, not spontaneous, not an accident. It was murder, and it had been planned. For Megan's parents, the trial was excruciating. Every photograph, every detail, every word from the prosecution felt like reliving the nightmare. But it also gave them a sense of justice, a feeling that Megan's voice would finally be heard, that her story mattered. And the community, still shaken, started to see the pieces fall into place. They saw a warning system in the making, how controlling partners escalate, how technology helps investigators, and how family advocacy pushes the case forward. As Chapter 4 closes, the case had reached its tipping point. The combination of forensic evidence, digital tracking, timeline reconstruction, witness testimony, Megan's chilling last message, created a narrative that could not be ignored. Jarrett's fate was all but sealed, but the courtroom drama wasn't over. The tension was palpable. Every day leading up to sentencing was a reminder of what was lost, what was uncovered, and what justice could finally do. The verdict, emotional impact on Megan's family, Jarrett Davis's sentence, how Megan's story became a cautionary tale, the legacy of her final message. The audience will feel closure, heartbreak, and a sense of justice as the story reaches its dramatic end. Every moment, every discovery, every chilling detail has built toward that moment. The fire may have tried to erase her, but Megan Bodiford's story cannot be forgotten. The courtroom was silent, heavy. Every breath seemed louder than it should be. Megan's parents sat in the front row. their hands clasped tightly, faces pale, eyes red from crying, but focused. Jarrett Davis sat at the defense table, calm on the surface, but inside, a storm raged, every piece of evidence stacked against him, every witness's words cutting deeper than any knife. The judge entered, gavel in hand. The room straightened. This was the moment. The prosecutor stood, every word deliberate, every pause calculated. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "we are here today to tell the story of a young woman who trusted the wrong person, a woman who reached out for help in her final hours, and a man who refused to let her go." She paused, looked directly at the jury. She sent one text before she died. One. And it is the key to understanding everything. "You don't know what he's put me through." That is her voice. That is her warning. That is her truth. And yet, he silenced her. The room was tense. Every juror leaned forward. Every person in the courtroom felt it, the weight of the crime. The prosecutor walked the jury through Megan's last day, step by step, minute by minute. 7:30 p.m. Megan at home. Anxiety building. 8 p.m. Jarrett arrives. The argument begins. 8:45 p.m. Megan sends her final text. A desperate plea. 9 p.m. Jarrett leaves, returns, watches, waits. 9:30 p.m. Megan leaves for errands. 9:50 p.m. The car is engulfed in flames. Every step was deliberate. Every action pointing to one conclusion. Premeditation. Next, the jury was shown the forensic evidence. DNA on the car door matched Jarrett Davis. Fingerprints on the steering wheel. Accelerant found in his garage. Deleted phone messages recovered, showing planning. The defense tried to argue the fire was accidental. They said Jarrett didn't know how it started. They suggested Megan could have caused it. But prosecutors dismantled each claim, step by step, proof by proof. This was not an accident. This was murder. Jarrett's attorneys stood, trying to create doubt. "No one saw him light the fire," they said. "Intent cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt." But the jury had already seen the timeline, the digital footprints, the witness testimony, the chilling text. Reasonable doubt evaporated with every word. Friends, neighbors, and family came forward. Their words painted a picture of Jarrett's controlling nature. "She would never stay with someone who treated her like that," one neighbor said. "She was afraid," another testified. "Afraid of him, afraid of what he could do if she left." Even a coworker spoke of threats, of jealousy, of rage. Every testimony stacked together, like bricks forming a wall that no defense could breach. Finally, the jury retired to deliberate. Hours passed. Minutes felt like days. The town waited. The family waited. The community waited. And then the foreman stood, cleared his throat, held up a piece of paper. Guilty. The word echoed. Guilty of murder. Guilty of premeditation. Guilty of ending a life for control. Megan's parents exhaled. Tears streamed freely. Finally, a sense of closure. But the pain remained. The loss could never be undone. Weeks later, sentencing day arrived. The judge's voice filled the courtroom. "Jarrett Davis," he said, "your actions were deliberate, cruel, and calculated. You took the life of a young woman who was only trying to live freely. For this, you are sentenced to 43 years in state prison." Jarrett remained silent. No expression, no apology. The family wept quietly. Their grief transformed into relief. Justice had been served, at least in part. The case shook the community. Social media was alive with outrage. People shared stories of domestic violence. People warned others to be careful. People honored Megan's memory. Vigils were held. Candles lit. Posters carried. Her story became a symbol of warning, a symbol of resilience, a symbol of truth. Her message, her chilling final text, was remembered by all. "You don't know what he's put me through." It was displayed in court. It was cited in news articles. It was shared online. That single text became a voice for victims everywhere. A reminder that words, even in fear, hold power. A reminder that pleas for help should never be ignored. Megan had spoken, and now the world had listened. Investigators and advocates emphasized lessons. Signs of control and abuse cannot be ignored. Digital footprints can solve crimes. Families should listen to warnings. Justice can be served even when tragedy strikes. Forensic science, witness courage, and determination combined to bring closure. But most importantly, Megan mattered. Her life, though cut short, changed the way people viewed domestic violence, fear, and control. Though grief remained, the family began rebuilding. Counseling, community support, events in Megan's honor. Her mother said, "We can't bring her back, but we can make sure she's never forgotten." Her father added, "She was brave. She spoke out. She fought in her final hours. That's her legacy." Even small acts of remembrance became part of the healing. Candles, scholarships, awareness campaigns. Every action a tribute to Megan's life. Jarrett Davis's conviction showed the power of evidence and investigation. It also highlighted human nature, how obsession turns to rage, how control becomes deadly, how warning signs, if ignored, can lead to tragedy. For the investigators, the process was relentless. For the family, the journey was heart-wrenching. For the town, the lesson was clear. Vigilance saves lives. But justice, though delivered, could never erase pain. Megan Bodiford's story is more than a headline, more than a news segment. It's a testament to courage, warning, and the consequences of unchecked control. She left a message. She left a life. She left a warning for others. Her death ignited awareness. It forced a community to look at domestic violence in a new light, and it ensured Jarrett Davis could never harm her or anyone else again. Her story remains a cautionary tale. Her legacy, a life that mattered. The audience is left with emotional connection to Megan and her family, understanding of the investigation process, the chilling reality of domestic violence, a sense of closure with justice served. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.